Hello, and welcome back to Sharing a Chapter a Day. This is Dara, and today I will be reading Chapter 5 of Engagement in Peril by Dara Odoe. Chapter 5 is titled Return to Captivities and Everyday Camp Life. As time and years progress, we continue to live under hiding and scrutiny in and about the regions of Thailand. Hours led to days led to months led to years, and during the middle of our second year in seclusion and somewhat comfortable with our new lifestyle during and in out our hideaway in Chonburi, late one evening while mother and sister were preparing our dinner outside the house where my little brother and I were playing, he was in a makeshift bassinet, and I was playing nearby, amusing myself with several black crickets and handmade clay marble. A large jungle green military truck pulled up to our stilt home there in Chonburi, and soon the truck came to a screeching halt. Several Thai soldiers in their jungle camouflage fatigue exited and made their way toward me and began to question who I was in Thai. By then I had learned to speak the Thai language. Almost fluent I was then. I replied that I was just a little boy who knew nothing. Who knows nothing? From the commotion and questioning heard, my mother and sister came closer to be by my side. And once the soldiers saw us there, all three of us together, they quickly commanded that we go with them right away. My mother and her sister told them that we were Thai and we had lived here for several years now. But to no avail, they demanded that we do as we were told, and they demanded and instructed us to get in the truck. At gunpoint, with my little brother cradled in her clutching arms, my mother, sister, and I were wrestled, kicked, and pushed into the back of the military truck and taken out of Chonburi. My Thai stepfather was out and about town, tending to his business and finances. We were suddenly rushed out of there, and we didn't even have time to get our belongings, savings, and earnings. Our life is going to be changed once again. Once shoved into the back of the truck, they took away every little bit of sunlight that there was. They closed everything off in the back of the truck. Once again, we were trapped, prisoners, and had no country or land to call home. We weren't the only one stuffed in the back of that particular military truck that day. There were many others just like us, people captured and recaptured and taken out of their homes and hiding, and are now being transported somewhere else. And only heaven knew where we were going that day, or how we were going to end up. The ride in the canvas-covered armored truck seemed endless. Metals and iron clanging and rattling echoed throughout the truck, drowning out our prayers and conversation. Silence filled our enclosed perimeter. We would only whisper to make sure everyone was okay. Prayers upon various gods and ancestors echoed throughout the confined space. People calling upon their ancestor, their many gods, and their deities for help and guidance. None of us knew where we were going, and most of us expected the worst, which was being put to death. We all anticipate that we will be taken to the middle of nowhere in the jungle to be killed, like the hundreds of victims that came before us. Our lifeline was at an end then, and fate had caught up with us, and once again, and was able to cut off our string to breed and comfort. Most of us had accepted it. No more running, no more pain, and no more suffering. Finally, our anguish and despair would end, and to the perfect and ideal place we would ascend. That's what we were all hoping for. It's the least that our God could give us, after all these years of torment and anguish. Peace was finally at hand, and we all had come to accept it, if it was meant to be then. Amongst the people in the truck were many women with young daughters and sons and very few men. While praying, I could hear that some of the captured had already accepted their faith and welcomed death. We all expected to be shot from behind, where we would kneel down, and without hesitation, a pistol or a rifle would be put against the back of our heads, and the trigger cocked back and pulled, where the exploding bullets would savagely scream its way through the gun barrel and shatter our skull and devour our brain in the process, and causing us a horrendous and bloody, painful death. That's what we all expected. We only hoped that we die instantly from the shot to the back of the heads. Finally, the jolting journey in darkness ends. After several long hours of riding in the dark, the truck suddenly came to a sloppy stop. Jungle Boots' footsteps thumped and echoed toward the rear of the truck, as we all heard, and all of a sudden, the wet canvas cover was flung open from one end to the other. The sudden morning sunlight blinded our eyes, while our cornea adjusted to the changes, and appearing before us was a serene, moist jungle with soft winds and morning dew draping atop the canopies before us. And there we were, in the middle of nowhere once again. So this was our place of death. At the very least, we can die peacefully in this serene jungle we all had come to accept. And for us, most of us had accepted death. A loud, demanding voice groaned from a megaphone, commanding us to exit the truck and to line up so that we may get processed and placed into our new refuge, which was another concentration camp. Once again, we were caged in like lambs for slaughter. This will be our new homes for the next several years. We lucked out this time. The soldiers that brought us here weren't instructed to kill us at all, and they weren't like the Khmer Rouge of Cambodia. They had on jungle camouflage military fatigue and were keen in following orders and directives. We weren't marked for death after all, not yet. Once we all exited the truck, we lined up in our immediate family and were given slots and spaces to live and dwell in. Here was our new home in this tropical jungle that is constantly covered in rain and dew. Camp life was pretty hard, but we made the most of what we had. Everyone in the camp shared the works. Neighbors and families shared and bartered for food and shared the water. We dug wells for water, harvested crops and vegetables, and if we needed or wanted meat for consumption, if it crawled or slithered along the ground or upon the tree and swam in the water, we killed it for its meat. We were once again hunter, gatherer, and agriculturalists. Our situation then had made us that way. There were very few times that our captor, our watchers, let us out of the heavily barbed fenced encampment to hunt and fish for meat and nourishment. Those who were taken out of camp to catch prey and such would hunt with handmade slingshot, sticks and stone, and a short distance away loaded guns and rifles were pointed at the back of their heads by their watchers and captors, just in case they get giddy and decide to seek uncaged freedom and run off. Often, on these hunting and gathering trips, the men and young boys would bring back plenty of meat to share with the camp refugees. We all would dine and feast heartily for those few days until the caught games and meat lasted. One other thing I didn't understand was why we, specifically my family, kept getting moved from sector to sector around the camp every few months or so. We dared not ask questions we didn't question the authority that watched over us. They had guns and we only had wits and hope. I guess it was just to keep us from knowing the area too well. But it was really strange now that I think about it. After all, my mother and family weren't anyone special. We were common folks like the many around us, although my mother and father were in the Cambodian Republic Army in their younger days. Maybe my mom was something special. Maybe she was some kind of special black ops and such. I laugh about it. But we need not bother to ask her about it. She was our mother, and that's all that mattered. We just simply do as we were told, and moved on. When it comes to providing for refuge, prisoners and captives, the necessity of everyday living, the camp's enforcer designated that each family would be issued a bamboo shack or a hut to live in. Our hut was tiny, cramped, and usually damp and wet. We sheltered our heads and body under a worn-down shack and slept atop a 3-foot-high bamboo rack. We had no window, and there was a big hole in the bamboo door. But we didn't care. We had a place to shelter us from the rain and kept our head dry. It was unfortunate for everyone, except for the military personnel, of course, who were watching us. They had brick buildings, soft cots, electricity, and raincoats to keep them comfortable. None of us refugees could escape the monsoon season, where our homes would flood out and we had to sleep and shelter ourselves wherever we can. When it rains, it pours. The rainfall seemed endless at times. Our shelter would be flooded knee-high, and I usually slept on the ground during the dry season. So on those rainy days in season, I had to find a corner on the bamboo rack to share with the rest of my family. We all bundled up and stayed cozy together, warming each other with our flesh and our body heat, and hopes for a better tomorrow. It wasn't just Cambodian in the camps here. There were Hmongs, Laotian, Vietnamese, some Thai, and people from neighboring countries as well. The atrocities at the time were horrendous and disastrous for someone in neighboring countries of Southeast Asia. During the day, adults, teens, and children worked on the field, harvesting vegetable and pail water for usage. The little kids and walking infants and I would walk around trapping insects, catching lizards, snakes, anything that was smaller than us to throw in with all the gathering and harvesting by the elders. Our favorite treat was grasshopper legs. We sucked on grasshopper legs, and there wasn't any tasty flavor to it. Somewhat bitter, I guess, but it kept our mind busy and kept us from going hungry. We also loved sucking down the sweet nectar from various honeysuckles that bloomed throughout the spring season. Most of the time, we would go help our folks with picking potatoes and crops. Sometimes, while under the shroud of darkness, us little kids, we would go to nearby potato patches that were owned by our captors, slowly crawling on our bellies while we steal potatoes to take home for supper. We were careful not to make any noise, for we would get a severe beating if we were to be captured, or worse, death may be dealt. We weren't given much supply from our captor. Each family was issued rice grain and salt once a month. They were issued according to the number of the people in your family, by family size. As for my family, there were only 4 of us then, at that time. We didn't get much, but we made it last. The white rice grain came in brown sacks and were cylindrical in shape, and when they are cooked, they would swell up and become very sticky. We also used the cooked rice, as glue. And we were also given cube salt, like the kind cow gets in cowlicks. And besides using salt as spice, we'd also use it as a bacteria disinfectant for our teeth and gums. Since we had no toothbrush, we would use the salt to brush our teeth and gums to keep the bacteria away. We spent our daily lives busy like working bees, not knowing of anything different. No one seemed to mind. It was the way it was, and after a while, it seemed natural to us to live in this type of condition, because that's all we knew. I can't say I hated or liked it, because it was normal. It was normal to us then. It was the hand that I, and those just like me, were dealt then. Who was I to change the hands of fate? We all had to learn to accept what we had and what we were, where we were, and what we were subjugated to on a daily basis. It was the norm to us, and nothing else mattered but living our daily lives as we were. And what we were refugees then. Camp life wasn't all that bad. Once you get used to it, it becomes second nature to you. It was what I was destined to experience and encounter until I came to be who I am destined to be. It was meant to be, and we live every day as it was our last. We made the best of what we had, and what we had, more precious than anything, any materialistic thing like fame or wealth. We had each other, a family of 4, mother, sister, brother, and I. In these various camps where we were being held, there were no such thing as flushable toilet, electricity, or a sanitation system to kill off bacteria and other harmful viruses. All there was a big hole in the ground, about 2 feet in diameter, and about 20 feet deep or so, surrounded by some bamboo poles strung and bound together to form a wall, which were never cleaned or sanitized. We didn't have running water or faucet to wash our hands and face. We even know what sanitation meant. It was a shithole, one could say, and it literally was. We defecated there and used it as often as we were allowed to. We had to squat like sumo wrestlers in their positional stance to take dumps. With our feet spread apart and squatting over the large hole, we defecated. There were no soft tissue paper nor any form of paper to wipe our behinds. We used either our hands, sticks, or leaves. Usually a stick were pretty handy. You could scrape the piece of wood from side to side where it scoops most of what you left behind on your anus. And I personally prefer using a stick. The rough edges of the stick cut the soft lining of your skin and rip away the feces that attaches itself to your anus. No doubt there was pain along with the wiping, but it was part of growing up. And that's all we knew. There wasn't a sink to wash or a paper towel to dry our hands with. There were no such sanitary things back then. We were lucky we were allowed to shit nonetheless. And we had accepted that as well. We shit where we can, sometime along ditches and behind people's huts, just like domestic dogs and animals. Often we were sneaking behind each other's back to shit, with worries always on the back of our minds. Now, there were rumors and incidents that occurred while we were in camps. Several unfortunate kids fell into the shithole and died due to suffocation and drowning. So you can say, drowning by shit. Often we would find people hanging themselves in these shit boots. They were individuals who couldn't take the horrendous lifestyle and were mistreated and taken advantage of by our watcher, captors, and soldiers. And these desperate lovers and assaulted young women with shame and misery usually end up committing suicide, leaving the unruly, harsh world behind. In these refugee camps, there were no therapeutic counseling or professional you can talk to help calm your nerves and anxiety. It just wasn't provided. Nor was it known to us by our primitive mind. So life goes on. Those who died, well, they died, and their bodies were burnt and families went to collect their bones and ashes afterward. We were all still prisoners after all. Rumors roam about in the refugee encampment that the shitholes were haunted. People told stories and fables of spirits and ghosts haunting them while they crapped in these various horrendous commodes. I believe it to be true as well, for I have seen it myself. I personally saw spirits and spooked myself, but luckily with my ancestor and good spirit watching over me, evil spirits and spook never bothered or harmed my innocent adolescent soul then. I am fortunate to this day that my ancestor still watches over me, and I believe that the spirits and spooks are not allowed to be leaving the living world unless they realize what they have done and repent for their sins. This is what I believe. These wandering spirits or spook must be dubious good deeds before leaving, whether telling family what they did wrong or helping a stranger from harm or anything of that sort. I too, several times on my visit to the commode, have witnessed and encountered those who hung themselves in the commode. Looking at them, their pale, lifeless body dangling back and forth, causing a thumping, squeaking creak from the wooden beam atop as they stop at one end and sway back the other way, with their flesh pale and bruised. Their eyes showed signs of sadness or burden, which at times scared my young, curious mind then. Most people in the camps were scared and bothersome of ghosts and spirits, especially the children, so they hardly used the shithole at night. Instead, they would use the ditches nearby, alongside the vegetable fields, or just shit behind their house. There was a myth that if by chance or fate you were into a spook or ghost, or whatever of the sort, you point your index finger at it and recite some holy words, and that would make them leave you alone. Then in turn we'll seek another to bother, I guess. When it comes to brushing and taking care of our teeth, we didn't have the necessity to do so. I didn't see or know of toothbrush until I was relocated to the States. We usually brush our teeth with small pieces of salt that we were issued, or didn't brush at all. People used what they could to brush and take care of their teeth, whether it was using a small splinter to pick at their teeth, or just simply using their finger, rubbing back and forth against their yellow teeth. Every captive teeth in the camp seemed to be yellow or brown. The only people closest to having bright white teeth were those of our captor, soldiers, and watchers. Like most of the children in the camp then, I didn't have my two front teeth and I was all smiles about it. It was part of growing up under the horrendous circumstance that we were born into. There was no refrigerator or icebox to keep and preserve meat and food. Perishable items had to be consumed within hours or days before they rot. Especially meat. They have to be consumed within hours or days after they were killed. When it came to power, energy, and man-made lighting, there were no electricity. We never knew such a thing existed, so we never had to complain about the matter. We simply lit fire, burnt campfire, simply burnt small campfire for cooking our meals and warming our shivering body. There were no electricity outlet, nor electrical or gas-powered stove, or even to cook food or wash clothes. We started fire by rubbing sticks together, using strings and twigs, and using lighting stones. We bathed in the rain by the water we caught, or the water we brought from the wells. For the many innocent children in the camp, we would bathe and wash ourselves in the moat around the camp. Everyone loved it when it rained. The majority of the children usually played in the rain and swam in the ditches nearby when it fills up with germy mud and bacteria-infested water. Also, that's when most reptile and water creature comes out. We would catch turtles, frogs, eels, fish, and other mud creatures. They would be the meat that we had with our rice and salt. We would swim in the flooded canal and ditches when it was monsoon season. And we would just enjoy ourselves until our parent demanded that we come home from the drowning monsoon. Thank you for listening. This is the end of Chapter 5. Be on the lookout for Chapter 6, titled Molested by Our Captors. Until next time, this is Do, Ra, Mi, and I'll see you later. Thank you.